Welcome back to our channel. Today the movie we're going to recap is Purple Hearts. One night at the bar, a band was performing. The vocalist of the band was Cassie. Immediately after finishing her song, she donned her apron and got to work as a waitress at the bar. While chatting with her fellow waitress friend, a group of U.S. Marines arrived. Initially, they were not inclined to serve the group, but when Cassie recognized her childhood friend Frankie among them, she embraced him warmly and welcomed the Marines. She then asked her waitress friend to accompany her while she fetched them some drinks. However, when she returned with the drinks, they teased her and irritated her. So she left in anger. Luke, one of Frankie's friends, felt guilty and approached Cassie to apologize for his friend's rudeness. But instead of forgiving him, Cassie told him to leave, saying he was only trying to get her attention. After the Marines departed, Cass's friend remarked that it was cool to marry a man who worked as a Marine. In the midst of their conversation, Cass's cell phone rang. She asked for a break and rushed out to the parking lot. Inside her car, she checked her blood sugar level and then injected insulin. It turned out that 6 months earlier, she had been diagnosed with early-stage diabetes, so she had to routinely inject insulin. The next morning, while Luke was jogging, a mysterious car approached him with the intention of hitting him, but he managed to dodge it. It turned out that the car was driven by a drug dealer named John, who had come to collect Luke's drug debt of $155,000 from before he joined the Marines. John had threatened to kill him and his family if he failed to repay the debt. Luke had begged for more time to settle it. As usual, after her performance in the evening, Cassie went to the restroom to inject her insulin, but she discovered that her insulin supply for the week was nearly depleted, and she lacked money to buy more. As she slumped, Cassie accidentally noticed an army badge on the toilet glass and instantly remembered her friend's words about the living allowances that a Marine's wife would receive. An idea sparked. The next day, Cassie visited Frankie and offered him a deal to marry her so that she could obtain medical insurance and receive the wife's monthly allowance for Frankie instead. The proposal was flatly rejected by Frankie, who explained that after his overseas assignment ended, he had already planned to marry his girlfriend. Disappointed but supportive of her friend's decision, Cassie left. Outside, Luke inadvertently overheard their conversation. The following day, driven by fear, Luke desperately invited Cassie to meet him at a restaurant. He told her that he had overheard her conversation with Frankie and that he would replace Frankie as long as he could receive all the wife's monthly allowance provided by the government. He added that in 2 days he would depart for duty in Iraq, and that if Cassie agreed to the arrangement, they would need to marry immediately. He also reminded her that during their contract marriage, to avoid suspicion, they should always send romantic messages to each other and make frequent video calls. Luke managed to persuade Cassie, who was in dire need of money, to agree to the plan. The next morning, Cassie and Luke went to the church. Cassie was surprised to see Frankie inside. It turned out that Luke had asked him to be a witness at their wedding. Frankie lent Luke a ring he planned to use to propose to his girlfriend and told Cassie to keep it until he returned from Iraq. From that day forward, Luke and Cassie officially became husband and wife. The next day, before leaving for Iraq, Luke and the other Marines gathered to bid farewell to their families. He handed a slip of paper containing his brother's name and phone number and said that if anything happened to him on the battlefield, Cassie must immediately contact his brother. Weeks later, Cassie and Luke exchanged regular romantic messages while living apart until one day during a video call. The Marines' faces appeared restless. Luke explained that the entire army was on guard against an enemy attack. Hearing this, Cassie tried to entertain the Marines by singing a song she had written, asking, "Should we fly or fight? Hope you come back home." Her performance cheered them up, and the next day, during another video call, Cassie happily announced that her band had received an offer to perform at a renowned music festival. Seeing her joyful face made Luke happy, too. On the concert day, after some preparations, Cassie and her band performed. The next night, Cassie received a call informing her that Luke had been seriously injured by an explosion and was undergoing surgery. In a panic, she rushed home and called Luke's brother. She searched frantically for the paper Luke had given her, but it was lost. Fortunately, she managed to locate his brother's address on the internet, and the next morning hurried to that address. When she arrived, it was Luke's father who opened the door. Unsure where to begin, she introduced herself as Luke's wife and explained her husband's condition on the battlefield. Shocked by the revelation, Luke's father admitted that Luke had never told him about his marriage or why he had joined the army. All the family knew was that he had accumulated significant debt and caused trouble. 3 days later, Luke was sent home to America for further medical treatment. He was astonished to see his entire family come to visit him and wondered how they had discovered his secret. His father then gave Luke and Cassie some time alone. Cassie explained that in her panic, she had informed his father about them. Luke clarified that he had kept his marriage hidden because his father was a cop frequently in contact with military officials who were now his superiors. If the fake marriage were discovered, his father would surely report it. To avoid suspicion, Cassie laughed it off and then inquired about Frankie's condition, holding back tears. Frankie replied that he too was a victim, but unlike Luke, his life could not be saved in the mine incident. The next day, after Frankie's funeral, Cassie gave Frankie's ring to his lover, explaining that after returning from duty in Iraq, Frankie had intended to propose to his girlfriend. But Frankie never made it back home. 1 week later, after leaving the hospital, Luke was forced to stay in Cassie's apartment so that no one would suspect their arrangement. Luke also began undergoing weekly therapy sessions with his father and brother until he fully recovered before his father arrived the next week. They worked together to make the apartment resemble that of a newlywed couple. Later, Cassie's singing career began to take off. Music labels became interested in producing her songs. Meanwhile, Luke remained focused on his recovery. One afternoon, while Luke was alone, he noticed John's car parked in front of the apartment. John called and said he knew about Luke's fake marriage. He warned that if Luke's debt wasn't fully repaid, he wouldn't hesitate to terrorize Cassie's family too. That afternoon in the park, Cassie and Luke's brother brought a dog to accompany Luke during therapy to help improve his spirits. The next morning, after returning from work, Cassie was surprised to see that a broken door had been repaired. She was even more astonished when she saw that Luke was able to walk, though he was still using a crutch. They then had breakfast together on the balcony, sharing a simple conversation that brought them closer. They joked and challenged each other with spicy food. Finally, when Cassie offered to help Luke take a shower, she saw with her own eyes how severe the wound on his leg was. The next day, at a family barbecue, Cassie was touched to see Luke's kindness toward the children. His sister-in-law even remarked that Cassie would make a wonderful mother. One night, while sleeping, Luke woke to the sound of a phone ringing. It was Cassie's mother who informed him that someone had tried to sneak into her house. When they arrived at Cassie's mother's house, Luke introduced himself as a close friend of Cassie. Cassie quickly calmed her mother, and Luke accompanied her while he checked the house. Suddenly, John called and confessed that he was the one who had broken into the house, secretly recording what Luke said to Cassie's mother, and he threatened to use the recording as evidence that their marriage was merely an arrangement if Luke didn't repay his debt within a week. After returning home, Cassie looked exhausted due to her diabetes. Luke immediately helped her lie down and administered her medication. In that moment, they both fulfilled their vow as husband and wife to care for each other through thick and thin. The next morning, because John's actions the previous day had crossed the line, Luke, desperate for retribution, went to John's headquarters and beat him up. Satisfied, he then used government funds to pay off the remaining debt before returning home. He visited Frankie's grave to vent his frustrations. When he got home, Luke was surprised to find all his belongings packed in a suitcase. He asked what was going on, and Cassie explained that someone named Jan had come to her mother's house and revealed everything about Luke's past and his debt. Realizing it was impossible to keep it hidden any longer, Luke finally confessed everything to Cassie. He explained that his original goal in getting married was to obtain the money he needed to settle his drug debt. And though he claimed to be completely clean and determined never to use drugs again, his confession only deepened Cass's heartbreak. She could no longer forgive his long list of lies, especially since her mother had already been implicated. After that night's concert, Cassie declared that she did not want to see Luke's face ever again and filed for divorce. Not long after, Luke vented his anger by going for a run until, after what felt like an eternity, he finally managed to run again. He was overjoyed, but his happiness was short-lived. Suddenly, Luke's superior called him in for a meeting. After the concert, Cassie's band manager informed her that she was invited to perform as the opening act at a major concert to be held the following week. While Cassie slept, Luke's father called her and informed her that earlier that afternoon, a man named John had reported their fake marriage. And now Luke was being interrogated at the military headquarters. Luke's father, who had been deceived all this time, expressed his disappointment. Cassie, unable to speak, was silenced in guilt. A few days later, during the military trial, Luke's lawyer advised him to remain silent so his sentence might be commuted, since this case of a fake marriage to secure government benefits was not unheard of. When Luke looked at the face of the woman he loved, he realized he could not protect her, and he boldly declared that he had orchestrated the entire scheme by himself, and that Cassie was merely a victim of his plan. Hearing this confession, the judge sentenced Luke to 6 months in prison, while Cassie was declared not guilty. The next day, before her performance at the opening concert, Cassie watched a video of her marriage with Luke. She listened to the vows they had exchanged to stay together through all the ups and downs, and as she sang on stage, every lyric summoned Luke's face in her mind. Cassie realized that she had fallen deeply in love with him. That night, as Luke prepared to leave for his sentence, he saw his badge and, despite having violated military law, was still honored for his service and sacrifice on the battlefield. "Thank you, God," he whispered. Cassie arrived on time, and the moment she met Luke, she immediately expressed her true feelings. What had been pretended before became real. Her feelings for Luke were genuine, They both kept their vows to care for one another, even if it was just for the simple things. Cassie longed to once again share a meal on the balcony with Luke, laughing together, and she wanted him to be the first person to hear her song. No matter how long it took, she would always wait for him. The end. Like and subscribe for more interesting movie recaps. Thanks for watching.